Hello, thank you for joining me. I'm Lynda Lamp, and I'm here to answer questions today. We've been reading Walking Through Your Walls, Loving Yourself and Everyone Else, Humanity's Handbook for Living Consciously in the 21st Century. This is volume 1 that we're reading right now. And today I've got some questions and also some background information we'll go through. This past week, on Sunday, we read Starting from the Halls of History. There were a lot of things in that chapter, in that section that we read. And so one of the things I wanted to do is just go over a couple of those items. So early on, I mentioned spiral dynamics, and I wanted to show you that is one of the versions of spiral dynamics. There are a lot of different images. So if you go into Google and you just put in spiral dynamics, this image here is one of the more common ones that you'll see. Hang on, it's loading. I thought I had it loaded. But we've talked about the colors in that image. Now I lost it again. Starting with the beige and working its way up. Beige, purple, red, blue, orange, green, yellow, turquoise. And so survival is beige, security is purple, energy and power are red, order is blue, success is orange, community is green, synergy is yellow, and holistic life support in this model is a turquoise color. I can't get that graphic to load for some reason. But this image here, this one is a very common, let's see, this one here is a very common version of that spiral dynamic. And there's a lot of text next to it that goes into more details. So I welcome you to look that up if you'd like and get more on that. Now, a couple of other things we wanted to touch on. Let's see, there were a couple of definitions. So when we were talking about the Presocratics, they were 5th and 6th century BCE Greek thinkers who introduced a new way of inquiring into the world and the place of human beings in it. They were recognized in antiquity as the first philosophers and scientists of the Western tradition. And then so there was a divine principle developed called Pentemychos, Pentemychos. And that was discovered or thought of by Persocles, so Perecewydes of Syros. He was a Greek or Syrian thinker from the island of Syros, and he authored a cosmology derived from 3 divine principles known as Zas, Thothene, and Chronos. And the 3 together were known as Pentemychos. It formed a bridge between the mythological thought of Hesiod and the pre-Socratic philosophy. And then Monarchanism is a Christian theology that emphasizes God as one person, in direct contrast to Trinitarianism, which defines God as 3 persons coexisting consubstantially in one being. So Father, Son, Holy Ghost, versus unity of one. So that's the Monarchanism is really, I think, the beginning of the oneness movement in terms of historical context. Okay, so that was that. I haven't received any questions as such about the reading. I have some questions that were submitted, and they tend to have more to do with Course in Miracles than they do with Walking Through Your Walls. But I'm happy to answer them because I feel like all this work is related and commingled. If you're not familiar with the Course in Miracles, the Course in Miracles is a text that was channeled, and back in the early 1970s, I believe. It's a 3-volume text. There is a main text. There are daily lessons, of which there are 365. And then there is a teacher's manual that goes with the main text and the daily lessons. So available on YouTube and on the Love by Light page on Facebook and also on SoundCloud. There are all 365 of the daily lessons. I have read them all. And then there is also readings of the main text. I did notice, for those of you that are following both, that on the Love by Light page today, for some reason, Sunday's posting did not post. So I will get that taken care of this afternoon. I think it's chapter 21, section 6 is what we read. So that has to get posted. It is out there on YouTube and on SoundCloud already. So these questions have to do with that material. Actually, it has to do with both the material because this is someone who's reading A Course in Miracles and also studying this work, my work. And she's asking for clarification. So last Tuesday, you said, it's God's play that we're living in. And I spoke of an invisible hand. A Course in Miracles, however, teaches that we create this world by our thoughts and that God doesn't know about this world. He knows we're asleep, but he knows not of our dreams. So, what I know to be true is true for me and my experience and my observations. The thing that we need to remember about a channeled work is that it's coming from somewhere outside of the person, but it's coming through the person, which means that it can be influenced by the person. And although I have no idea who's right and who's wrong in this, what I do know is that the Course in Miracles does not speak to me when it says what it says here. That we create this world by our thoughts and that God doesn't know about this world. So it's my understanding from my own personal experience that we are divinity in form. So if we're divinity in form, there's no way that God doesn't know about us or this world. So what I tell everybody is you need to find what feels right and true to you. So rather than believing any book, oh, hey, Gail, I'm glad you made it. And thank you, Mary. I see a chat in here, somebody on Facebook saying God knows everything. And I tend to believe that as well. Not only does God know everything, God is everything. God is everything. We are what don't know, right? We're the ones that don't get it. And okay, let's go on to the next question about this. Yesterday, she said, this was several weeks ago, actually. I said, the body is our temple. The Course in Miracles teaches that the body is an isolated speck of darkness, a hidden secret room, a tiny spot of senseless mystery, a meaningless enclosure carefully protected. It also says you cannot make the body the Holy Spirit's temple, and it will never be the seat of love. It is the home of the idolater and of love's condemnation. For here is love made fearful and hope abandoned. Right, and I don't agree with any of that. Right, that's not my experience. So even though I read the Course in Miracles daily lessons, and even though I am reading the chapters, I think it's important not to take any one text as the final say. In the case of the Course of Miracles, it's one person that channeled this information through. In the case of the Bible, that's many, many people and a combined work, right? Many, many people wrote various different pages and chapters in the Bible. In each case, if you're using it for your guidance, my recommendation is that you make sure that whatever you're hanging on to feels true. Now, we can read a lot of words, but if you're paying attention to how your body is reacting to things, you get a lot of clues. And your body can be your ego, and it can be interfering, but it can also be your collective memory. And so you need to be able to discern what the signals are that you're receiving. But the fact of the matter is, as far as I know, and actually science now quantum physics is backing this up 100%. Everything has consciousness. It's not different consciousness. And we're all one, right? So we haven't covered these things in the book, and we do get to it in the book. But basically, reality, what we think of as reality, what we look around and see, none of this is real. None of it's real. Because if you take any of it, any piece of any of it, and put it under the strongest microscope that we have on this planet, it all looks the same. Let that sink in. It doesn't matter if it's a piece of paper, if it's a phone, if it's a piece of your car, if it's a piece of rock, piece of tree. It doesn't matter. It could be something that's living. It can be something that's dead. It could be something that man created. But if you put it under the strongest microscope we have, it will all look the same. And that is a really big clue that we live every day ignoring. It's all the same. Everything. Not only that, it's moving. All of it. No matter what it is. It's moving. Now, I realize the chair you're sitting on does not feel like it's moving. And yet, took a piece of it, put it under that microscope, it's moving. How can that be? How can that be? The table that this laptop is sitting on doesn't seem to be moving, but I know that it is. So immediately, once you come to that understanding, you realize that what we're looking at here in this 3D world that we talk about, it's not what we think. It's nothing of what we think. So, what is it? And what it really is it's a projection for each of us. What we see when we look out here with our eyes is our own projection. Now, we're all doing it, so it's a collective experience that we're sharing. No one of us is creating this reality. This is a shared reality. And at the same time, each of us is creating our own reality. Because what's real is, to us, is the meaning we give it. Right? So something happened to me earlier today, and I have friends who are upset about it. They're upset about what happened. I'm not upset about what happened, because it's happened, it's over, I've processed it. But it's real for them, because they've still got it in their mind, and that's what's making it real for them. And once they accept it and let it go, then it's gone, and it won't be real for them anymore either. But this is why I say we really have to get to a point where we understand what's happening here in real time. Because until we do, nothing really is making any sense. Here's a comment. I suppose much of my mood is often what I focus on. And that can certainly be true. A lot of times, though, our moods can be a result of something that happened even days ago, weeks ago. So that's going to vary depending on your state of mind, I think, as to what your mood's going to be. I'm just looking to see what more I can say about these two questions. I really do believe that our body is our temple, and there's lots of other spiritual teachings out there that would tend to agree with that philosophy. Delayed focus. Gail, can you tell me a little more? I've got a question coming in from Gail. I'd like to just get a little more before I try and answer it. In A Course in Miracles, it says you cannot make the body the Holy Spirit's temple, and it will never be a seat of love. I think it can't be anything but that. I think the seat of love is why we're here. Right? It's my understanding that we came into form to experience heaven on earth. And we do that through our connection with each other in service. We're not here. Neil Donald Walsh says quite often, it's not about your life. It's about who your life touches and how it touches them. And I think that we don't have that. I don't think we have that understanding. I think a lot of people think it's all about their life. But it really isn't. It's only about their life in relationship to other people, because that's why we're here, is to be in the collective together in a co-creation of what's happening here. That's the whole point. And there isn't anything but love. The only creative energy that exists on the planet is the energy of love. And so there really isn't anything other than love or a lack of love. And everything that you see is one of those two things. All right, let's see. Gail, you mentioned that mood could be from days before. Right. So this is Gail saying, so I might be well served to know that my mood might not be just about the day at the moment. That's true. So a lot of times, in fact, for many people, it's most of the time, we are not in the moment. Most people have what I call a ticker tape running in their head. And it's a ticker tape of self-talk and he said, she said stories, typically. So we spend our time thinking about the things that have happened and what people have said. And a lot of times we can get caught up in thinking how we should have said something different. And all of these different scenarios will play out in our head, and we'll get really stuck in them. And so at any given moment, chances are we're not actually in the moment we're somewhere else in our head, either in the past or in the future. We're either thinking about something we're getting excited about going to do, or something we're dreading on doing, or we're thinking about something that happened in the past. And most of the time, those are not happy things. Those are usually things that bothered us, that aren't resolved, that we spend a whole time going through the he said, she said conversation side of it. I'll share with you, many, many years ago, the bedroom in our house was upstairs. And I was involved in a community organization that was causing me a lot of stress and distress. And I would wake up in the middle of the night and I'd have to go to the bathroom. And not only is it on the second story, but it's also a circular staircase. So you're not going down those stairs without waking up a little. But what I would discover is that I would wake up, I'd get down the stairs, and, by the time I get down to the bathroom, I'm thinking this whole scenario, whatever it was that had happened earlier in the day or earlier in the week, whatever this thing was about this organization. And I would be so riled up by the time I got back upstairs to go to bed that I wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. Lots of people's lives are like that every day. So one of the things that I did, and I recommend this process to everybody. I had been reading the book by Rhonda Byrne, The Secret, at the time. And there were several little sayings in there that were short. And so I pulled this one sentence out of the book. I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. And I memorized it. And what I did was I decided that in any waking moment, if I didn't have something I had to be saying or doing, like in this case, I can't have it running while I'm doing this because I'm engaged with you. But if I'm sitting in my car driving somewhere, or if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm not having to specifically think about something and concentrate, that I would have that sentence running in my head. And I can tell you that it took some time. I spent a whole summer, like every time I would have to drive somewhere. And when I drive somewhere, it's usually 2.5 hours, because that's the closest anywhere to go is I have to go that far. But so I would spend 2.5 hours in the car singing that phrase. I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. And then after a while, I got a little bored with that one. And so I needed something to mix in with it. And there was another phrase in The Secret that I also lifted. I am God in a physical body. I am... hang on a second. All right, I'm not going to try and come up with it right now. But in any case, I don't know why it's blocking right now. It doesn't want me to share. I'll share it next time, or I'll get it written down for you. But the point here is, I completely broke that scripted reviewing what happened yesterday. He said, she said, what's coming up. I broke that whole habit. And so now what happens is, at night when I'm falling asleep, I'm whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. I have some others that I mix in there now too. I've done some work with numerology, so I have some phrases that are numerologically tuned to be high frequency, and I'll often use those. But the exercise, or the point, is that I no longer am awakened or can't get to sleep because I'm hung up on something that happened that I'm thinking about. There's only the moment, right? If you haven't read or heard of Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now is a very powerful book. He's written a number of books that speaks to what I'm talking about right now, this issue of there's only this moment. Because the other thing we didn't talk about, beyond the fact that nothing is solid, everything's moving, it all looks the same. And the other piece of life that really becomes extremely important to understand so that you can get to a point where you can relate to the spirituality of life is there's no such thing as time. Time is something that we created in order to experience the moment. But there's only now. The moment that you are in is the only moment that you have. It's either gone or it hasn't arrived yet. And so trying to stay in that place of love and balance is what's called for. That's where you find the truth in that moment. Now, let me get caught up on the screen here. So thank you, Amber. Amber was the one that asked the questions about ACIM. She says, thank you. Your answers are very helpful. That's wonderful. I'm glad. Gail says, I agree. I understand. And I suppose those thoughts may not even be the truth. Exactly. Like fake news. So I guess meditation is about here and now, nothing else to do at the moment. Exactly. Exactly. When something occurs, tune in. How are you feeling? What does it mean for you? And stay with that. Because the most wisdom that you've got is in that moment, understanding what's happening in that moment. We do what is called a knee-jerk reaction quite often. And we react to things that happen in a knee-jerk way, in an automatic way, in a way that portrays the history that we've experienced. But what can happen is we can cloud the moment with that history because we're bringing to the moment our beliefs about everything that's happened. And yet what's happened in the moment may not have anything to do with any of that. But we can't see it because what we're looking at it through our eyes that are clouded with history. Yes, exactly. So Amber chimes in, we only have this moment. Time is also an illusion. Exactly. Time is totally an illusion. Here's something that's important to understand about time, though. When we heal ourselves of anything in this moment, we heal ourselves in all lifetimes of whatever that is. Because all of this is an illusion. So that's why it's really important, and I'm excited to help anybody that's looking to find the truth of their life and to find their path and to walk through their walls. Because I know what's real here, and I know that once, I don't know anybody who has found and discovered their truth who's walked back away from it. Right? Once you understand these concepts, that this is all an illusion and that time doesn't exist and that we are really the creators of our experience, right? So we don't create what happens, but we create our experience through our response to what happens. So if you adopt an attitude of curiosity about life, and an openness and willingness and an acceptance, right? That everything is divinity in form. then it makes it a lot easier to handle things that come up that are disruptive. Because we don't, as human creatures, as human beings, we don't like change. We like our bodies, our wiring of the housing that we reside within. It doesn't like change. It likes things to be the same and predictable because that's what's comfortable. But it's only when we get uncomfortable that we actually grow and learn. And so we're always fighting the natural tendencies of our housing to keep us from expanding and growing, creating through our perception. I'm not sure about that phrase. Don Miguel Ruiz wrote a great little book called The Four Agreements. And the four agreements are to be impeccable with I'm not necessarily doing them in order, but, and that's something you can Google as well and look at images. If you Google the four agreements, flip to images. There's lots of slides of the four agreements in a simple, it's a whole little book, but they're very simple, broken down. The first, again, not in order necessarily. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions. And don't take things personally. And the first two seem pretty obvious. Don't make assumptions, though, is a real winner. Because this is part of this idea of what is reality, right? Reality is in the eye of the beholder. And that while there might be some finite reality we could all agree to, when I make an assumption, I'm somehow thinking, maybe subconsciously, but still thinking that I know something. I don't know anything, right? I can't make an assumption why somebody did something or said something, or because it's not for me to know. And when we make assumptions, there's that old phrase, right? You make an ass out of you and me, because the beginning of the word assumption is ASS, and then you, the letter U, and then me. So don't ever assume. Because by assuming, then you've blocked whatever truth might be available to you. And then the last one, it's not necessarily the last one in order, but the last one that I'm going to talk about. Don't take things personally. So this really gets into the idea of who does it belong to? If someone comes in and says something to me and I snap at them, that's not about them. That's about me. And that's what we're talking about here. So often, someone will say something to us and we take it on and we own it. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're a bad person because so-and-so said something. No, that isn't how it works. Don't take it personally, because quite often, most cases, maybe always, it's about them, not you. And so we really have to learn, where are these boundaries? We allow ourselves to be hurt by things that people say when we shouldn't. That's on them. Somebody says something mean to you, that's not on you, that's on them. They're being mean. It's a reflection of them. Now, that's not to say that if you genuinely know in your heart that there's something that you did that hurt somebody or that you shouldn't have done or whatever, That's not to say that you don't have your own responsibility to deal with that. But what I'm saying is that when somebody says something, that's them. Whenever somebody's speaking, that's them. You don't make anybody say anything. This is one of these fundamental misunderstandings that we have in life about who's responsible for what. There is a lot of confusion among people about responsibility. And there are an awful lot of people going around in the world with their finger pointed this way. It's everybody else, right? No, it's not everybody else. That was one of the best bosses I ever had. Robert M. Bassett once said, take that finger and point it this way. And he was right, right? So if someone asks you, well, why didn't you do something? And your first word out of your mouth is, or words out of your mouth are, well, they didn't, right? That's, you've got it out there. You're looking out there for your reasoning. And there isn't anything out here. That's what we know. That's what we know from a quantum physics world. There isn't anything out here. So it really becomes on us to figure out who we are and to be responsible for who we are and to own who we are. Now let's see if I have questions here. How we perceive what we experience. So how we perceive what we experience is going to be influenced by, yes, exactly. So Amber has added that when you point that one finger, there are three pointing back at you. And that's exactly right. So when we perceive something, we are perceiving it through our own filters and our own history and physical housing and the receptors that we have and the way our body works. And that's another thing to always bear in mind. Other people's bodies give them a different experience of life than perhaps your body is giving you. I've seen so many children that have been labeled ADHD or whatever. And when I interact with them, I don't see anything wrong with them. What I witness and experience with them is their experience of the world is different than mine. When I was in college, I worked with autistic kids. And this was way back in the early 70s when autism was kind of like a new thing. You know, why does a kid beat his head on a file cabinet? Well, what I can tell you is that because they're having some kind of a different experience of life than we are. So that's their perception, right? And if we don't help them understand their perception, they're always going to be troubled. There are kids that, you know, are sensitive to noises. There are other kids that are sensitive to visual stuff. I have a friend that, you know, I showed them artwork for We Love Us originally, and it was all in primary colors. And they couldn't handle it. It was disruptive to them. A completely different perception of the same artwork, right? For them, it was disruptive. For me, it was comforting and happy. So that's what makes us all unique, right? Each one of us has our own individual experience of what life is. That's perception. But there is a reality. And the reality is that nothing is solid. Everything's moving. There's no such thing as time. These are the things that we know for sure. And so understanding how to be a human in these situations and under these conditions is really the challenge. And how to be a human under these conditions and in these situations when hardly anybody's talking about the fact that there's no such thing as time and everything's an illusion. So that's the challenge that we each are facing. Because once you have that knowledge, now you have to somehow manage to function in this world with everybody else who has no clue at the moment what's going on here. So that's where we are, right? We're in this world now where there are some people who are awake and who do know. There's quite a few, actually, who do know. And now we're trying to share that so that everyone can know. Because once you understand these concepts, it really makes life a lot easier. It's a lot easier to figure out what's yours to deal with and what's somebody else's to deal with. Because many people, maybe most people, are caught up in this sort of game of trying to make someone else happy. And we're not loving each other because we don't love ourselves, because we don't even understand ourselves. So that's really, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you try to understand what's happening here, help you understand what's happening to you and your experiences, and help you find that way to be happy and love yourself so that you can then love others fully and unabashedly. I don't see any more questions. Let me check email real quick to see if any have come in while we've been on here. No, I don't see any that have come in today. So I'm just wondering. I see it's about, we've been here, not quite 45 minutes. Oh, here's a new one. All right, let's see. Gail says, I think, too, that when we're a kid and nobody believes a word we say, eventually we might just quit saying anything. For that happened when I questioned others' belief in religion. Yes, so much of the trouble in our adult lives has come from our lives as children. And this is part of the problem. We're caught up in a world right now where there's all these crazy conspiracy theories. And yet, in my mind, the biggest conspiracy we all live with every day, that's the biggest conspiracy. That we are divinity in form, that we are each a part of a greater whole. We don't teach that to our children. We don't teach children that they're divinity in form. We don't teach them to meditate. We don't teach them to look within for answers. We're authoritarian with them. We tell them to sit down and shut up and, do this and do that. And I mean, I know parents that lock their kids in their room because they just want to sit and watch TV by themselves and they don't want to be bothered. To me, this is the biggest conspiracy. And it's worldwide. And most people are participating in it. And that's the conspiracy I want to reveal. That's the conspiracy that I want us to learn our way through, right? Work our way through and break those habits. Because most of the unprocessed trauma that people have started in their childhood. And I believe that most of the white protests that we've seen throughout 2020 and into 2021 have occurred because these people have their own unprocessed trauma. They believe themselves to be victims. And because they believe themselves to be victims, they're taking their anger out on others. And we feel a victim when we've experienced a trauma. And so that's that's what is needed here, is a mass healing. That's how we heal, is we need a mass healing. And we're nowhere close, right? Because very few people are talking about what I'm talking about. Those people don't love themselves. If you loved yourself, you would never show up and do the things that have occurred in this last month and year. You wouldn't. You'd approach it a completely different way. Yes, so Gail is saying curiosity and acceptance rather than rejection and self-judgment. Exactly. Or fudgment. Exactly. So adopting an attitude of curiosity and allowance, right? And it's not acceptance and allowance. Like, we're not saying that it's okay to do bad things. That's never the point. It's about understanding that there's a fundamental shift that has to happen in our thinking. If everything is divinity in form, then you really have to look at things that you have determined in the past to be bad, and you have to reframe them. Because in essence, if it's all God, then we look for the larger purpose that connects it all. I see Amber saying, I felt like a victim for a very long time. Now I know I'm not, and it's very liberating. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful, right? Because again, we end up taking the things that people have done to us personally, right? And when you realize that, this is a function of divinity and it's expressing itself, and it may not be a very high expression of itself, right? The question, I think we've talked about this in the past at one of these Q&As, but basically, it's not, the question in response to whatever's happening is not why. We tend to, when somebody does something to us that we don't like, we tend to want to know why. Why is it happening? And that really can be a red herring and a very misleading path to try and go down. Because the real question becomes, what? Not why did it happen, but what are you going to do in response to what happened? Because that's where you are. You're in the place of, it happened to you. And now you have to figure out what your response is. And that's what matters. Because the only thing we have control over, like, we don't have control over hardly anything. We can think we do, but we really don't. Because even if you've got everything in your house exactly the way you want it lined up, you can't stop the lightning storm from striking your house and destroying it. You can't stop the guy, speeding around the corner and driving his car into your living room. There are things that we have no control over, most of it. There is one thing we do have control over, if we choose. And it's got to be a conscious choice, right? We can choose to have control over our reaction, over our response to what happened. And remember, I think I've shared with some of you anyway, I'm lying on the ground when I busted my hip, or I busted my leg after I'd had my hip replaced. I'm laying on the ground waiting for the ambulance. And I'm smiling and laughing and wondering, okay, what? I wasn't expecting this. I wonder what this is all about, right? What does this mean for me? But my reaction was my choice, which was to stay in that place of openness and curiosity. I know other people that would have been laying on the ground, swearing, mad, nasty to whoever showed up to pick them off the ground. This is where we have our power. Our power is in ourselves in the moment. What do you choose to let come out of your mouth or to let your physical reaction be? That's where your power is. So, got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if we have any more conversation about being a victim we want to go into, or anything else last minute. Just a reminder to everybody, I do this every Tuesday. I do the reading of the book itself on Sundays at the same time. If you are like my work or want to support my work, you can go to lindalamp.shop and be a light sponsor. I know I have a couple of people who are watching who have done that, and I am so appreciative of that. And there's various levels. The higher levels include one-on-one work with me every month. So for those of you that are wanting to do some work, I am available for that as well. And you can also, buy additional one-on-one sessions if you wanted. And you can also find the books there, the ebooks, and also hardback and also paperback. I don't see any more questions coming in. Yes, keep an open mind, right? So this is one of the things that happens to us. It's kind of a trap of this 3D world that we live in. We look around and we think we know what we're looking at. And it's a great exercise to realize that. And that's one of the things that, the Course in Miracles, the daily lessons were really very helpful. It's a great course to go through to sort of break down the rigidness that we tend to have in terms of our assumptions and what we think of in this 3D world. So it is a good exercise to go through. But basically, this next week, try and stay open. Think about how there isn't any such thing as time, and everything's moving and made up of the same material. So sometimes that can be helpful as well. If you have a challenging person in your life that you're needing to interact with, remembering that we're all made of the same stuff can be helpful, and can tend to sort of level the playing field some. Nobody has anything more than you do, right? It's all divinity, and it's all accessible to us. A lot of times we just don't ask. But that's the other thing to realize, is that there's consciousness in all of it, right? Everything that we put under that microscope, it has consciousness. Everything has consciousness. Everything is participating in this grand illusion that we're living in. Everything. So when that, pen that you love disappeared for a while and then showed back up again, there's no mystery to that. That pen had something it wanted to do, and it went and did it. That's how I look at all that stuff. When I can't find something, it's the universe playing with me in a delightful way. Oh, thank you, Amber. I'm so glad you've joined me today. And I appreciate the feedback about the background too. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you again. And I do think I'll go ahead and wrap up at this point. We've just got about 5 minutes left, and I don't see any other questions coming in. So thank you to all who have stayed or come and gone during this. And those of you that participated in the chat, that's been great. I appreciate it so much. And I know some people are like, well, why haven't you put the chat things in the picture? Because I'm the only one here. That's why. Managing all of this, I'm still learning it. And so eventually I will probably get to the point where I can drag comments onto the screen and include them into the video. But right now I feel like I'm if you're happy and you know it, clap your hand or fart out loud. Great, Gail. Thank you. Gail, by the way, is a stand-up comedian. So I appreciate her humor. So I am going to wrap up here at this point. Thank you to everybody. Namaste. Much love. I hope to see you next week. Take care. In the meantime, if you want to reach out, you can text me at 907-351-3003. You can send your questions to questions@walkingthroughyourwalls.com. Much love. Namaste.